Captain Maya Cole's hands gripped the controls of the Boeing 777, her composure as unshakable as the steel around her. She had earned her place in this male-dominated world through grit, determination, and an unrelenting focus on excellence. Yet, beneath her polished exterior lay a secret that threatened to unravel not only her career but also the life of her trusted co-pilot, Ethan Reed. In the sky, they were partners, two halves of a well-oiled machine. But on the ground, a storm was brewing, one born of ambition, betrayal, and a relentless need for control. By the time the truth surfaced, the consequences would spiral beyond anything either of them could imagine. It was a story of trust destroyed, vengeance unleashed, and lives forever changed. No one could have foreseen how far they would fall, or how high the cost of revenge could be. In the high-stakes world of aviation, where trust is sacred and mistakes can cost lives, one betrayal sets off a chain of events spiraling into revenge, scandal, and destruction. Captain Maya Cole, a celebrated pioneer in her field, hides a secret that threatens to shatter the life of her trusted co-pilot, Ethan Reed, unleashing a storm neither of them can control. In the sky, they were partners. On the ground, they became each other's greatest downfall. Captain Maya Cole adjusted her crisp Navy uniform as she strode through the bustling terminal of Dubai International Airport. The captain's insignia gleamed on her shoulders, a testament to years of perseverance in an industry that rarely made room for women like her. At 42, Maya commanded not only the cockpit but also the respect of her peers. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had fought countless battles, many unseen, and emerged victorious. The world of aviation was glamorous to outsiders, but Maya knew its demands all too well. Long hours, high stress, and the constant need to prove herself had shaped her into the composed, no-nonsense leader she was. Yet, behind the polished exterior lay secrets she guarded fiercely, including an affair with Amir Alid, a powerful figure in Dubai's elite circles. Maya had met Amir during a diplomatic summit hosted by the airline, where she had been invited as a symbol of their progressive image. What began as casual flirtation had evolved into a clandestine relationship, fueled by his charm and her yearning for an emotional escape from the relentless pressures of her career. Their affair had always been discreet, conducted in whispered phone calls and fleeting encounters during her layovers in Dubai. But secrets, Maya knew, had a way of surfacing at the most inopportune moments. Ethan Reed, her co-pilot for this flight, was everything Maya admired and dreaded in a younger colleague. At 31, he was ambitious, sharp, and uncompromising in his principles. Ethan had joined the airline only 5 years ago but was already being groomed for higher positions. His reputation for integrity and a meticulous approach to work preceded him. "Morning, Captain," Ethan greeted her as they crossed paths in the crew lounge. His smile was polite but restrained. As always, Ethan was professional to a fault, with an almost uncanny ability to make others feel as though they were being quietly evaluated. "Morning, Ethan," Maya replied evenly. She appreciated his skill in the cockpit but found his rigid moral compass exhausting. It wasn't that Maya lacked principles, she had simply learned that survival often required bending the rules. As they prepared for their flight to Dubai, a 14-hour journey, Maya noted Ethan's focused demeanor. His pre-flight checks were thorough, and his interactions with the cabin crew efficient. He was the kind of officer who inspired trust, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that his uncompromising nature could one day become a liability. The takeoff was smooth, with Maya expertly guiding the Boeing 777 into the clear morning sky. As the aircraft climbed to cruising altitude, the hum of the engines became a comforting backdrop to their work. Maya and Ethan settled into their routine, exchanging information about weather patterns and flight paths with practiced ease. "Looks like we'll be dodging some turbulence over the Gulf," Ethan remarked, his tone crisp. Maya nodded, her attention on the control panel. "We'll adjust as needed. Let's keep the passengers comfortable." The hours passed uneventfully until they reached the midpoint of their journey. With the autopilot engaged, the cockpit settled into relative calm. Maya leaned back slightly, savoring the quiet. But her sense of ease shattered when her phone buzzed. Glancing at the screen, she saw Amir's name flash across it. The message was innocuous enough, a reminder of their dinner plans for the following evening, but it sent a ripple of anxiety through her. Maya had always been careful, but the presence of Ethan beside her made her acutely aware of the risks. She set the phone down, but not before Ethan's sharp eyes caught the name on the screen. "Amir Alid," he remarked casually. "Quite the notable figure," Maya's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her expression neutral. "He's a close friend of the airline," she said smoothly. Ethan didn't press further, but Maya could sense his curiosity. The moment passed, but her unease lingered like turbulence on an otherwise clear flight. The next evening, during their layover in Dubai, Ethan decided to stay back at the hotel to catch up on paperwork while Maya left for her meeting with Amir. As the evening wore on, Ethan's paperwork required access to the captain's files. With Maya unreachable, he requested access through the airline's encrypted system. What Ethan found was unexpected. Alongside routine flight schedules and crew reports were personal messages exchanged between Maya and Amir. The content was suggestive but not explicit, yet it was clear that their relationship extended beyond professional boundaries. Ethan stared at the screen, his stomach tightening. The airline had strict policies against relationships that could jeopardize its reputation, especially with high-profile figures like Amir. Ethan closed the files and leaned back in his chair, conflicted.
The following morning, Maya greeted Ethan with her usual composed demeanor. Unaware of what he had uncovered, their flight back to London was uneventful. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he had a responsibility to act. Back at headquarters, Ethan filed an anonymous report with the airline's ethics board, detailing what he had seen. The report was careful not to speculate but highlighted the potential risks of Maya's involvement with someone as influential as Amir. Ethan believed he was doing the right thing, but he couldn't anticipate the storm his actions would unleash. A week later, Maya was summoned to a meeting with senior executives. As she sat in the sterile conference room, the gravity of the situation became clear. The airline had launched an internal investigation, while Amir's connections ensured that the details remained confidential. Maya's position was suddenly precarious. After the meeting, Maya returned to her apartment, her mind racing. It didn't take long to connect the dots: Ethan's demeanor during their last flight, his staunch principles, and his access to her files. Maya felt a wave of betrayal unlike anything she had experienced before. Ethan hadn't just jeopardized her career, he had exposed the fragile balance of her personal life. And as Maya sat in the dimly lit room, her anger began to take shape. She wouldn't let this go unanswered. Betrayals were nothing new to Maya Cole. She had spent years hardening herself against the setbacks and slights that came with being a woman in a male-dominated industry. But this felt different, calculated, cruel, and it awakened something in her that she hadn't felt in years. Maya had buried her pain, focusing instead on rising through the ranks and proving herself in a world that had always doubted her. The affair with Amir had been her only indulgence, a brief escape from the relentless control she exerted over every other aspect of her life. Now, Ethan had threatened to take even that away. The next morning, Maya greeted her crew with a smile, her anger carefully hidden beneath a mask of professionalism. During the pre-flight briefing, she addressed Ethan with unexpected warmth, her tone light and almost friendly. Ethan seemed surprised but willing to accept the olive branch. "Let's have dinner during the layover," she suggested casually. "We need to clear the air. No hard feelings." Ethan hesitated, studying her expression for any sign of duplicity. But Maya's facade was flawless. Eventually, he nodded. That evening, they met at a quiet rooftop bar overlooking the lights of Bangkok. The setting was calm, almost intimate, and Maya played her part perfectly. She spoke of the pressures of her career, the sacrifices she had made, and the loneliness that came with the job. Ethan listened, his initial wariness softening as he saw a side of Maya he hadn't expected. "I was angry at first," she admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "But I think you meant well. You just didn't understand the consequences." Ethan nodded, his expression sincere. "I never wanted to hurt you, Captain." I just wanted to protect the airline. Maya smiled, though a flicker of something unreadable lingered in her eyes. Of course you did. By the time they returned to the hotel, Ethan felt as though they had turned a corner. He believed the tension between them had eased and that the trust they had lost could be rebuilt. Maya, however, had already begun to lay the foundation for her revenge. In her room, she opened her journal, a habit she had relied on for years to process her thoughts. Her pen moved quickly, the words spilling onto the page with clarity that surprised even her. "He'll learn," she wrote simply, closing the book and placing it on the nightstand. She stared out the window, the city lights casting long shadows across her face. The anger inside her had settled into something colder, sharper. The air outside was still and heavy. But within Maya, a storm was brewing. Maya Cole sat in her dimly lit apartment, her laptop open on the coffee table. The glow of the screen reflected off her tense features as her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Hesitating, she typed a query into the search bar. The rage she felt toward Ethan Reed boiled within her, pushing her to seek methods of revenge that were as discreet as they were devastating. The stakes were too high for error. Ethan had betrayed her, and she would make him pay. Hours turned into days as Maya immersed herself in the murky corners of the internet, sifting through forums and hidden websites. She disguised her identity with encryption tools and disposable accounts, her paranoia ensuring she left no digital trail. During one of these exhaustive searches, she stumbled upon a lead, a shadowy criminal group operating out of Nairobi. Known for their meticulous operations, they specialized in clandestine acts of revenge, ranging from sabotage to permanent harm. Intrigued, Maya followed breadcrumbs of vague references and cryptic mentions until she found a secure forum where the group's activities were discussed in hushed tones. They were called the Crimson Veil, a name that sent a shiver down her spine. The stories about their operations were chillingly precise. They executed plans that left no evidence behind, ensuring plausible deniability for their clients. Her breath caught as she read about their methods. This was exactly what she needed. Maya hesitated only briefly before crafting a message to an encrypted contact address linked to the group. "I have a target. Discretion and precision required. Reply if interested." Her finger hovered over the send button, her pulse racing. With a deep breath, she clicked it. Hours later, her inbox pinged. The message was brief, bearing a crimson veil symbol and the single word, "details." Maya's fingers trembled as she composed her response. She avoided specifics that could tie her to the crime, instead outlining her objective: the target must suffer irreversible harm without suspicion falling on me. I need a clean, undetectable method. The response came swiftly. Coldly efficient: we can arrange contamination of food or medical exposure. Food tampering is subtle and effective. Decision required. Maya's chest tightened. This was real. This was happening. She typed back, "Food tampering. Proceed." The representative, who referred to themselves as Shade, laid out the logistics. Maya's role would be pivotal. She needed to ensure proximity to the target and facilitate the contamination. "We require your presence in Nairobi for final arrangements," Shade wrote. "Execution depends on precise timing." Maya read the instructions carefully, committing them to memory before deleting the messages. She knew she had to align her travel plans with Ethan's schedule. Fortunately, her seniority as a captain gave her leverage in securing assignments. She filed a request to co-pilot a long-haul flight to Nairobi, citing her experience with the route. Her request was approved without question. With the flight confirmed, Maya turned her attention to Ethan. Their professional relationship had been strained since the ethics board investigation. But she knew she needed to rebuild trust to avoid suspicion. She started small, offering polite greetings during pre-flight briefings and complimenting his work during landings. "Nice approach today," she said after a flight to Frankfurt. "You handled that crosswind beautifully." Ethan seemed surprised but nodded. "Thanks, Captain. That means a lot." Over time, Maya's calculated friendliness began to thaw the tension between them. She suggested grabbing coffee during layovers and shared stories about her early days in aviation, framing herself as a mentor figure. By the time the Nairobi flight approached, Ethan appeared at ease in her presence, unaware of the trap she was setting. The day of the flight arrived. Maya maintained her usual calm demeanor as she prepared for takeoff, exchanging professional pleasantries with Ethan and masking the turmoil beneath her composed exterior. The flight itself was uneventful, with clear skies and smooth navigation. Maya used the time to engage Ethan in casual conversation, further solidifying his trust. "It's good to have someone dependable in the cockpit," she remarked with a faint smile. Ethan smiled back, his guard completely down. When they landed in Nairobi, Maya's focus sharpened. She excused herself from the crew, citing personal errands. "I want to check out some local markets," she said lightly. The crew thought nothing of it, and Ethan barely noticed her absence. Maya hailed a taxi and directed the driver to a location provided by Sheikh. The address led to a modest building in a quiet part of the city. Inside, the air was cool and still, the atmosphere charged with secrecy. A man, Sheikh, stood waiting, his face obscured by a cap and sunglasses, his posture rigid. "Falcon," he greeted her, using the alias she had adopted during their correspondence. "Sheikh," she replied, her voice steady. He reached into his pocket. Sheikh produced a small vial, holding it up with deliberate precision. "This is what you need," he said, his tone calm and measured. Odorless, tasteless, effective within hours. It will mimic food poisoning symptoms. Maya took the vial, her grip firm despite the storm of emotions raging within her. "And the hospital?" she asked, her voice steady. "Covered," Sheikh replied. "If he's admitted, our contacts will handle the rest. Your role is complete after the initial contamination." She nodded, slipping the vial into her bag. "No loose ends?" she asked quietly, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "None," Sheikh assured her. "Follow the plan, and you'll remain untouched." The meeting concluded swiftly. Maya left the building, her steps measured as she returned to the waiting taxi. The vial felt like a lead weight in her bag, a constant reminder of what she was about to do. Back at the hotel, she rejoined the crew as if nothing had happened, her smile easy and unassuming. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, every detail of the plan replayed in her mind. Each step was a calculated move in a dangerous game. Ethan had no idea what was coming. Soon, her revenge would be complete, and she would reclaim the control he had stolen from her. The next day, the crew's chatter filled the air as they relaxed after a long day of flying. Maya joined in with practiced ease, her laughter genuine enough to blend into the lively atmosphere. Yet her mind was far from at ease. She had spent days building up to this moment, ensuring her plan would go off without a hitch. "Tonight, we should celebrate," Maya suggested casually. her tone light and inviting. There's a restaurant nearby with fantastic reviews. Local food. Great atmosphere. My treat. The offer was met with enthusiasm. Even Ethan, who had been cautious around Maya since their past conflict, seemed eager for a chance to unwind. Her recent efforts to rebuild trust had paid off. He smiled and nodded his agreement. Sounds great. It'll be nice to relax a bit. Maya's heart thudded in her chest. But she maintained her composed demeanor. She guided the group to the restaurant. A charming spot she had scouted in advance. It was lively enough to ensure a relaxed atmosphere but not so crowded as to make her plan impossible. The warm lighting and sound of soft laughter set the perfect stage. As they were seated, Maya took charge, recommending dishes and encouraging the crew to try local specialties. She quickly identified a dish on the menu she could tamper with without drawing attention. When the waiter arrived to take their orders, Maya made a show of consulting everyone, ensuring Ethan's choice aligned with her plan. The food arrived promptly, steaming plates filling the table with enticing aromas. The crew dug in enthusiastically, the conversation flowing freely as they relaxed into the evening. Maya waited for the perfect moment. As laughter erupted over a joke shared by one of the attendants, she slipped the vial from her bag under the table. Her movements were practiced and precise, her face betraying no hint of the storm brewing within her. The contents of the vial disappeared into Ethan's plate with a subtle tilt of her hand. Maya used her fork to stir his food slightly, ensuring the liquid was thoroughly mixed, before leaning back in her chair. Her actions were seamless, unnoticed by anyone at the table. Ethan's attention returned to his plate as the laughter subsided. He picked up his fork and began eating, complimenting the flavors. "This is fantastic," he said, gesturing toward his dish. "Good pick, Maya." "Glad you like it," she replied smoothly, raising her glass. "To a successful flight and a great crew." The others joined in the toast, their glasses clinking together in a moment of camaraderie. Maya sipped her drink, her heart pounding in her chest. Every bite Ethan took brought her closer to her goal. The evening stretched on, filled with laughter and light-hearted conversation. Maya played her role perfectly, engaging in the festivities while keeping a careful watch on Ethan. As the meal wound down, the crew began discussing their plans for the following day. Ethan appeared relaxed, even jovial, his trust in Maya fully restored. She smiled and nodded, offering her input where necessary, but allowed the conversation to flow naturally. The subtle shifts in Ethan's demeanor, a slight flush to his cheeks, a faint sheen of sweat on his brow, were invisible to everyone else. But Maya noticed them immediately. By the time the group left the restaurant, Ethan appeared slightly off balance. He attributed it to the food, joking about the richness of the local cuisine. Maya joined in the laughter, her voice steady and light. Inside, she felt a cold surge of triumph. The poison was working. Back at the hotel, Maya bid the crew good night, her expression warm and genuine. She watched as Ethan disappeared down the hallway toward his room, his steps slightly unsteady. Only when she was alone in her own room did she allow herself to exhale. The vial was gone, its contents delivered with precision. Now, all she had to do was wait. Sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, the weight of her actions pressed down on her. But she pushed the doubt aside. Ethan had betrayed her, nearly destroyed her career. This was justice, she told herself. This was balance. Hours later, As the city of Nairobi slept, Maya lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She replayed the evening in her mind. Each detail etched into her memory. She thought of Ethan, oblivious to the trap he had walked into, and felt grim satisfaction. By morning, the effects would begin to show. The plan was unfolding perfectly. That night, Ethan began to feel a deep discomfort settling in his stomach. At first, he dismissed it as indigestion from the rich local cuisine. But as the hours passed, the symptoms worsened. By midnight, he was nauseous, sweating profusely, and burning with fever. Maya, who had been feigning sleep in her adjacent hotel room, received a call from one of the flight attendants. "Captain, something's wrong with Ethan," the attendant said. Her voice edged with panic. "He's really sick." Maya rose quickly, masking the flicker of satisfaction that passed through her. "I'll be right there," she said, adopting the concerned tone of a supportive colleague. Throwing on her uniform, she headed to Ethan's room, where she found him curled up on the bed, his face pale and drenched in sweat. "Ethan," she said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "What's going on?" He shook his head weakly. "I don't know. It's like my body's shutting down. I feel awful." Maya turned to the others. "We need to get him to a hospital," she said firmly. The crew quickly agreed. And within minutes, they had arranged for a taxi to take Ethan to the nearest clinic. Maya insisted on accompanying him, her outward concern a perfect cover for her true intentions. Over the next 2 days, Ethan slowly regained his strength. The hospital staff, unaware of the deeper scheme at play, praised his resilience and assured him he would make a full recovery. The Crimson Veil operatives ensured their contamination efforts were untraceable, leaving no evidence of foul play. When Ethan was finally discharged, he appeared weak but relieved. "Thanks for everything, Maya," he said as they left the hospital. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Maya offered him a kind smile, her eyes betraying nothing. "That's what colleagues are for," she said simply. Inside, she felt a surge of triumph. The plan had worked perfectly, and no one suspected a thing. As they returned to the hotel, Maya allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Ethan's trust in her remained intact, and the Crimson Veil had executed their role flawlessly. She watched him shuffle toward his room, his steps slow and unsteady, and felt the weight of her success settle over her. This was the revenge she had meticulously planned, and it was unfolding exactly as she had envisioned. That night, as the city's lights twinkled outside her window, Maya reflected on the events of the past days. The operation was complete, and the consequences would ripple through Ethan's life in ways he couldn't yet fathom. For the first time in months, Maya felt a sense of control return to her life. The storm inside her began to quiet, leaving only the cold satisfaction of a plan well executed. Weeks passed after Ethan's discharge from the hospital, and life seemed to return to normal. The crew's routines resumed, with flights taking them across continents. Ethan appeared to have moved on from his ordeal, though his colleagues often noticed he seemed more fatigued than usual. Maya observed him carefully from a distance, noting the faint shadows under his eyes and the slight hesitations in his movements. Still, she maintained her calm, confident exterior, knowing her plan had been executed flawlessly. However, the fragile normalcy began to crack. Ethan's symptoms resurfaced one afternoon during a routine flight briefing. He struggled to concentrate, his hands trembling slightly as he reviewed the flight plan. Maya feigned concern. Her voice calm and supportive as she suggested he see a doctor. Ethan dismissed her with a weak smile. But later that evening, he found himself unable to ignore the growing discomfort. His energy waned. And unrelenting fatigue took hold of him. The next day, Ethan scheduled a medical checkup, hoping to uncover the source of his lingering symptoms. The results left him reeling. The doctor, solemn and professional, explained that his tests had come back positive for HIV. Ethan sat in stunned silence, the weight of the diagnosis crushing him. He had no idea how this could have happened. His mind raced as he tried to pinpoint a moment of exposure. He thought back to his hospital stay in Nairobi but couldn't identify any specific event. Confusion turned to suspicion as Ethan replayed the events leading up to his illness. His thoughts returned to the dinner in Nairobi, where Maya had been unusually warm and friendly. Her sudden camaraderie had struck him as odd at the time, but he had dismissed it as a genuine attempt to mend fences. Now, with the diagnosis hanging over him, the pieces didn't seem to fit. Ethan began to observe Maya more closely during their interactions. Her professionalism was impeccable. But there was something guarded in her demeanor, a subtle distance that hadn't been there before. He couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she knew more than she was letting on. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan started investigating discreetly, careful not to raise suspicion. He retraced their steps in Nairobi through casual conversations with the crew, piecing together details about Maya's movements during their layover. Her claim of running errands seemed innocuous enough. But the timing had been unusual. She had left the group just hours before he fell ill, and no one had seen where she had gone. Ethan's unease deepened as he considered the possibility that her actions had been deliberate. His investigation led him back to the restaurant where they had dined. He questioned the staff under the guise of reminiscing about the trip, but their accounts revealed nothing suspicious. Frustrated but undeterred, he turned his attention to Maya herself. He began paying closer attention to her behavior, noting any inconsistencies or unusual actions. Over time, he noticed patterns, moments where she seemed overly cautious or avoided certain topics. Maya, for her part, had sensed Ethan's growing suspicion. She noticed the way his eyes lingered on her during meetings, the subtle tension in his interactions. Her instincts told her he was piecing things together, and she knew she needed to act quickly. She began covering her tracks, deleting old messages and ensuring there was no evidence linking her to the Crimson Veil. Her meticulous nature served her well, but the pressure of maintaining her facade began to take its toll. Ethan's breakthrough came one evening when he stumbled upon a cryptic message exchange during a routine check of the airline's internal communication system. The messages weren't addressed to Maya directly, but the timing and context aligned too perfectly with their Nairobi trip to be coincidence. He managed to trace the messages back to an encrypted account, one that seemed to have been used only during that specific layover. Fueled by a mix of anger and betrayal, Ethan dug deeper. He combed through flight logs, expense reports, and crew schedules, looking for anything that might connect Maya to the events in Nairobi. His persistence paid off when he discovered a discrepancy in her reported activities during the layover. The errands she had mentioned didn't align with her actual movements, raising even more red flags. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Ethan intercepted a conversation between two former Crimson Veil operatives who had been arrested on unrelated charges. Their discussion mentioned Falcon, a name that struck a chord with him. He remembered hearing Maya use the term during a casual conversation months earlier, though he couldn't recall the context. It was enough to convince him that she had been involved. Ethan's discovery left him seething. The betrayal cut deeper than he could have imagined. And the realization that someone he had trusted could orchestrate such a scheme was almost too much to bear. Yet, he knew he couldn't confront her without solid proof. He needed to ensure his accusations would hold weight, not just with their colleagues but with the authorities as well. Over the next few weeks, Ethan carefully documented everything he had uncovered. He compiled a timeline of events, cross-referenced with evidence from his investigation. Every detail was meticulously recorded, from Maya's sudden friendliness at the dinner to the inconsistencies in her story. By the time he was finished, he had a comprehensive dossier that painted a damning picture of her involvement. Maya, unaware of the extent of Ethan's findings, continued to play her role. She maintained her professional demeanor, going about her duties with the same precision and confidence as always. But beneath the surface, her anxiety grew. She knew Ethan was no longer the trusting colleague she had manipulated and braced herself for the moment he would finally make his move. The tension between them became palpable during flights, their interactions tinged with unspoken hostility. Maya noticed the way Ethan's gaze lingered on her, the questions he posed that seemed innocent but carried hidden weight. She responded with calculated calm, determined not to let him see her falter. Yet in her quiet moments, doubt crept in. Had she underestimated him? Was her plan truly as foolproof as she had believed? Ethan's patience paid off when he uncovered a critical piece of evidence, a transaction record linking Maya to a Nairobi-based contact known to work with the Crimson Veil. It was the final confirmation he needed. With the proof in hand, he prepared to confront her, knowing the fallout would be explosive. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shatter the carefully constructed facade of their professional relationship. Ethan's discovery had turned the tables, and Maya's world was about to come crashing down. For a moment, Maya said nothing. Then, a faint, bitter smile crossed her lips. "And what are you going to do about it?" Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. "You'll pay for this," he said through gritted teeth. "I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done." Maya's smile faded, her expression turning cold. "Believe what you want, Ethan. But you don't understand the whole picture." The cryptic remark only fueled Ethan's anger. But he knew he couldn't allow the confrontation to escalate further. They still had a flight to land, and the safety of their passengers came first. For now, he swallowed his rage. But his resolve to expose Maya's actions hardened. When the plane landed and the passengers disembarked, Ethan wasted no time. He submitted a detailed report to the airline's management, outlining his findings and presenting the evidence he had collected. The intercepted communications, suspicious financial transactions, and inconsistencies in Maya's account painted a damning picture. The airline's internal investigation team launched an inquiry immediately. What they uncovered was more than Ethan had anticipated. Maya's connections to the Crimson Veil ran deeper than anyone had suspected, and her movements during the Nairobi layover aligned perfectly with the timeline of Ethan's illness. The management was shocked. Maya, a highly respected captain, had used her position and access to orchestrate a malicious and calculated act of revenge. She was immediately suspended from her duties, and the findings were forwarded to the authorities. A week later, Maya was arrested. She was charged with reckless endangerment, criminal conspiracy, and abuse of her professional privileges. The media quickly picked up the story, and it became a sensation. Headlines detailed the shocking betrayal, the secretive criminal network, and the fallout within the airline industry. Maya's once sterling reputation was in tatters. During the trial, The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence against Maya. The intercepted messages with the crimson veil revealed the steps of her plan in chilling detail, from tampering with Ethan's food to infiltrating the Nairobi hospital. Testimonies from the crew and Ethan painted a vivid picture of her manipulation and deceit. The prosecution also introduced the contaminated dinner as a pivotal piece of evidence, leaving no doubt about her intentions. Maya remained composed throughout the trial, though her silence often spoke volumes. She denied certain allegations but couldn't refute the overwhelming evidence. The courtroom was tense as the jury deliberated. When the verdict was announced, the air seemed to crackle with intensity. Guilty on all counts, the judge declared. Maya was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, and her pilot's license was revoked permanently. As she was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, cameras flashed, capturing her stoic expression. The once proud captain had fallen from grace, and the world watched as her story became a cautionary tale. For Ethan, the verdict brought a mix of relief and lingering pain. Justice had been served, but the scars of Maya's actions remained. The stigma of his diagnosis and the betrayal he had endured weighed heavily on him, and he struggled to rebuild his life. Yet, he refused to let the experience define him. Instead, Ethan turned his pain into purpose. He began working with organizations dedicated to HIV awareness and education. Sharing his story became a way to heal, and he found solace in helping others navigate similar challenges. His advocacy work brought him into contact with individuals whose resilience inspired him. And slowly, he began to see his experience as a source of strength rather than a burden. Through his work, Ethan discovered a renewed sense of purpose. He traveled to schools, community centers, and conferences, speaking openly about his journey and the importance of compassion and understanding. His efforts gained recognition, and he became a prominent voice in the fight against HIV stigma. The betrayal that had once consumed him became a catalyst for change, pushing him to make a difference in the lives of others. Meanwhile, Maya adjusted to life behind bars. The solitude of her cell provided ample time for reflection. At first, she clung to her anger, justifying her actions as a response to Ethan's betrayal. But as the days turned into weeks, cracks began to form in her armor of resentment. She thought about the people she had hurt, not just Ethan, but the crew members who had trusted her, the colleagues who had admired her professionalism, and the family she had distanced herself from in her pursuit of revenge. The weight of her actions settled heavily on her, forcing her to confront the emptiness that had driven her to such extremes. Over time, Maya began to acknowledge her own flaws, her need for control, her inability to let go of perceived slights, and her refusal to seek help had all contributed to her downfall. She started attending counseling sessions offered at the prison, finding a semblance of clarity in the process. While she couldn't undo the damage she had caused, she resolved to take responsibility for her actions and work toward redemption. However small, Maya's journey of self-awareness was slow and painful, but it marked the beginning of a transformation. The cold bitterness that had once defined her began to thaw, replaced by a quiet acceptance of her circumstances. She knew she would never return to the life she had once known, but she hoped to find meaning in the one that lay ahead. In the years that followed, both Ethan and Maya found ways to move forward. For Ethan, the ordeal became a source of strength and purpose, guiding him toward a life dedicated to advocacy and education. For Maya, the quiet solitude of her prison cell became a place of reflection and growth, as she worked to rebuild a sense of humanity she had long ignored. Their stories, though intertwined by betrayal and pain, became testaments to the complexities of human nature. They served as reminders of the consequences of anger and vengeance, as well as the possibilities of redemption and resilience. Though their paths diverged, the lessons they carried stayed with them, shaping the people they would become.